Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us from Western Canada here this morning. I'm joined by my colleague, Gary Euler, who will guide you through some of the more technical details of MainTegrity Cybersecurity Framework. The product is our end-to-end cyber security and resiliency product for mainframes. In a vintage style of most of the standards for protection of mainframes, we support all of the silos in NIST and DORA and PCI and other standards: protect, detect, respond, and recover. I'm Al Surratt. I am the president of MainTegrity, and I welcome you to the meeting. If you would be so kind, Gary, if you'd advance me to the next slide, that'd be great. So we're going to talk a little bit about mainframe security this morning, but we're going to start out with some major breaches. Often we hear, oh, well, you know, mainframes are really not attacked that much anyway, are they? Well, it turns out that if you use, you know, any of the research tools like the large language modules, my research assistant is Mr. ChatGPT, and he seems to have a little different view on that. So we'll go through that. Then we'll talk about the key elements in the cybersecurity framework. FIM Plus, which was our original product and is the leader in ransomware detection and removal. Early warning, which combined with our instant response capability provides key identification in real time of attacks that take place. The recovery assistant we'll spend a little bit of time on, because in spite of all of the detection and protection that you put in place, you may need to recover. We're going to help you with that process. And a very exciting new product, which we'll cover in at the high level. We will be also explaining that in more detail in our next webinar. So it'll focus primarily on data exfiltration. We're also going to wrap up with compliance, and then some questions and maybe even a demonstration if we have time. So if you'd advance, Gare. Mainframes are connected to everything these days. The attackers are software companies that actually rent their ransomware software to the eventual attacker on your system. So really, the attacker only needs a user ID and password and the ransomware tools that are available, and they can do a commercial attack. But it's also very important to understand that there are organizations in the world where there are literally thousands of employees that are focused only on trying to break into the largest systems in the world and extort the maximum amount of ransom. These are state-sponsored. And it is not an exaggeration to say that North Korea may have several thousand engineers, very resourceful engineers, trying to break into your system or a system very much like yours right now or in the immediate future. And we're adding more capability in the area of open source and APIs. They're often a recipe, a roadmap for how to get into your system. With each connection we have, the risk is multiplied. Next slide, Gare. But here's the really big deal. We don't talk about it much in the mainframe area, but there have been a lot of attacks that we basically know must have taken place on the mainframe, because that's where the millions and millions of records that were stolen, exfiltrated, of course, That's how that took place. Those private records that were exposed that resulted in years of litigation, huge settlements, some small fines actually, but huge. These are real events. And if you don't have to believe me on that, I would urge you to go and look at any of these attacks or about another 15 that I could point you at over the last 10 years. They're very severe problems when they occur. So we need to think very hard about the risk being low, but the consequence being immense. In the most recent one that I did research on, the United Healthcare outage in the United States, it affected us. The outage affected a third of Americans who couldn't deal with health insurance claims, and that was hospitals and doctors and pharmacies and individuals. This is a huge problem. You can look at their financials. They estimate that the cost of that cyber event was $2.5 billion. And every time I look at it, they increase that estimate. These are monster problems. So, what we're talking about today is a way to make sure that you don't end up in that situation. Many of these events carry on for many years, where state attorney generals, particularly in the US, but other company or country level agents represent those people whose data was revealed. And there is ongoing litigation, oftentimes for 5 years and sometimes more. And it always sounds like this. Your lawyer trying to do your defense comes into your office every day for 5 years and says, how did we possibly screw this up this much? And it's really not us. It's not the people that are in the security business. It's the very hungry, very talented attackers finding ever new ways to break into your system. So enough of that. Everybody knows it's a problem. Let's move on. Garrett, what did we find out when we looked at all these problems? We found out that the problems arise in 3 areas. Often enough, the processes are understood for security, but they're not carried out very well. Sometimes they're unimplemented. Sometimes they're untested. Often they're incomplete. What happens is that technology needs to take over. We need to have vigilance. We need to have tools that are moving at the speed of computing, not at the speed of people. We often find people that just say, oh, well, I'm going to upload my SMF to Splunk or some other tool, and then I'll be able to see everything that's going on. Well, that's kind of true. But the problem with SMF is much of the detection, the underlying detection, is never recorded in SMF. And on top of that, it's late. And on top of that, you have people that need to respond, and maybe they're there, or maybe they're out on training, or maybe they weren't fully trained. They don't have the right skills. So that takes us into the people issues. We need to be able to react at machine speed. And I believe that we are the only company on the face of the planet that can show you how to do that. There's a very high correlation between the largest breaches and sites with mainframes. You do your own research. You figure out how big the penalties and the litigation and the settlements are. But we need, as an industry, to be able to react much more quickly. Gary, if you would. So we're going to talk about what are the common attack vectors. And everybody talks about ransomware. Well, I have to get a program into the system in some manner in order to do bad things to you. But any well-orchestrated attack these days may use ransomware as a service because it's very up-to-date software, but it's certainly going to include multiple backdoors and probably time bombs. So that if you're successful in recovering in some manner, they're just going to go in, use the same access as they did before. And now that you've got your data back, they're just going to corrupt it again. So instead of having one outage, you have two. Another thing that happens is they sometimes compromise backup. We have technology in the area to help you with ransomware. You said that already, but also to make sure that your backups haven't been compromised. When you go to use those, that we know that the backup information data has not been distorted in any manner. So always important to keep an eye on that. But now the really fearsome ones. If somebody gets in on a ZOS system, they can encrypt almost anything they want that they can get access to. And there are ways, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, to raise your access and in fact bypass some of the best security tools in the world like RACF Top Secret or ACF2, but to be able to work around those by doing privilege escalation and authorization tampering. That gives me the capability to access data that maybe even my user ID didn't have access to before, but it means I can now run an encryption. And on a ZOS system, encryption runs very, very quickly, and it requires no special authorization. So if all I do is say, oh man, I got a user ID here, let me see everything that's attached to it that I can get access to, and I encrypt all of it, and I keep encrypting until I hit something valuable that you can't run without, well, that's a pretty good attack vector. But just in case that doesn't work, these days we almost always see data exfiltration. So what a ransomer wants to do, because this is a business, they want to attack you, they want to hurt you, they want to make it reversible because at some point they're going to ask you for ransom. But the ransom often enough is the smallest part of the cost. So Gary, if you go on one more slide, and then I think it's over to you. So how does our system work? Well, we focused on process to begin with. The process that's laid out in the security standards, both in Europe and in North America. And those standards are implemented in most parts of the world, sometimes under the same name, sometimes under a country local name. But NIST CSF is certainly the leading standard in the US. DORA, the leading standard in Europe. But PCI for everybody that handles debit card information, very important. And of course, zero trust. So click again for me, Gary. What we do is we map out that process. When we built our product, we decided that we needed to identify lots of things in technology because people just aren't fast enough. We came out with FIM for ransomware avoidance. We monitor behavioral changes. We have real-time threat detection built in and real-time alerts that actually are sent by text or email and get to the support staff in a second or less. But because we can also do identify and suspend the people that are doing bad things to you, we can do damage control while the support team is reacting to the problem. So we'll get into that in a little deeper in a minute. Click again for me, Gary. So what we do also has to affect the people involved in providing security. So if there's a couple of security people in your site, just remember there are a couple of thousand security people, security knowledgeable, computing system knowledgeable people that are attacking you. So arming the two people in security with the right tools to prevent the 2000 from being able to break in is pretty important. Our end-to-end GUI that starts with protection and ends with a full recovery and verification is a way for the people to be able to react more quickly in a very complete manner. So they can do both recovery of system information and data with speed and precision. So Gara, one more slide, and
I think it's me.
then I think it's over to you.
Were there any questions so far? Anything show up, Bill, in the question place?
I'll look at that right now. There is a Q&A session that should be at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, please put them in. We'd be happy to go through them at the end of the session. No, there's nothing in yet, Gara.
Okay. Okay, so we've been doing this a long time now. So maybe some of you have seen this next part of this presentation before. We started out, oh God, if I told you it was 7 years ago, maybe it was 8, I can't remember exactly, but we started out with a file integrity monitoring product. And we did that, and what a file integrity monitoring product does is it reads the contents of files, creates a hash key from those contents, and stores that key away in a vault. And as long as that's going normally, you rerun the scans periodically, you compare the scan you just created to the one in the vault, and if they haven't changed, if they match, everything's okay. When they don't match, what we do is our system generates an alert, and the alert can cause a number of actions to take place. One of them is it can send you an email or a text message to let you know about that. It goes out to various places in the system and drags in forensic information. For instance, you can go to SMF and pull in any SMF records that pertain to the change that was detected. It can go out to a tool like ServiceNow to see if there's any change request records that look like they pertain to the change that was made and that kind of thing. So it's quite a full function file integrity monitoring product. I think there's another one here. Yeah, here's where we go. So right out of the chute, because we've detected this and we go to SMF and pull in the information, we can tell you the user ID that made the change and the exact time the change was made. And that's valuable forensic information, and we display that in our browser interface, or you could display it in ISPF if that's your preference. But trust me, most people, once they start using the browser, will continue to use it. We also can go out to the typical tools that people use for change management, and that, BMC's product, Helix ITSM, used to be called Remedy. We can certainly go out to that and pull in any change request records that appear to be aligned up with what this change was. Same thing with ServiceNow. And we can display those change request records right in our browser. So we start to pull all the forensic information in automatically into one place so your staff can review everything all at once in one spot. If the change is detected on a text-based file, we also provide an inline, in-stream compare facility, so you can compare the change version with the version that existed prior to the change, and you can see it'll highlight the changes that were made, so you can see right away what the change actually was, and give you some idea about how malicious it is, or if it's fairly benign and that kind of thing.
Gary, there was one question came in.
Yep.
Gary said run scans periodically. Yes, we run full scans as required by security standard. We typically say run full scans on the weekend or in a low utilized time, but we have customers that run hundreds and hundreds of scans per day to make sure that at a very common or very frequent intervals, they can detect any kind of an unauthorized change that entered the system. And there's lots of ways to schedule that some on demand, some automated. So I mean, I think that technology is well understood for us.
Yeah, and just further on that, that's a great question. I always didn't go down this deep, but so the key that we create is a multi-part key, and one part of the key is based on the contents of the file, and one part of the key is based on the metadata. When we do a quick scan throughout the day, it's just really recreating the portion of the key that's based on the metadata, and they're very, very quick. And I said hundreds of scans a day. We actually have customers who run thousands. So they're very quick, they're very low utilization, and so you can run them during the day without much of an impact to your CPU time. The full scans, which read the metadata and the contents of the file, are much more resource intensive, and most people choose to run those at a lower utilization time on their processor, usually, midnight kind of thing, or on the weekends, that kind of thing.
Another question actually just came in. Do you not do scans when a data set is open? Typically, the scanning process is looking for programs that have been updated incorrectly or in an unauthorized manner. So we don't really scan data per se. We're looking at PDSs, at static files, like once a backup is created, it shouldn't be altered. Parameter environments. One that's particularly dangerous that often gets overlooked is JCL libraries. It doesn't sound like that would be much of a risk, but if I just change the program name in a JCL stream, that can be a pretty big problem. So where attack on data comes from is from programs and from parameters that have been updated to allow that. So that's where we are finding the problems, typically around ransomware. So back to you, Gare.
Okay. It's actually a couple years ago now, we announced the availability of, I know time seems to go by so fast, our early warning feature. And this is, as opposed to file integrity monitoring, this is actually real time, or as close to real time as machine speed will let you get. And in this case, what we do is we've built security exits and SMF exits that watch what's going on and can give you the ability to intercept things that are going on that you don't like, and take countermeasures if you want. You could suspend the user that's doing them. You could cancel the user that's doing them, that kind of thing. And the kind of things that we detect in this, if somebody exploits a vulnerability on a system and kind of takes an address space that's operating at normal kinds of authority levels and gives themselves APF authorization, we'll detect that, and we'll give you the ability to say, you know what, I don't know who this is, I don't know why they're doing this, but I'm not going to let them do it. I'm going to stop them from doing it. And we give you that kind of ability. Same thing with privilege escalation. If you have something that's running in normal problem program state, and all of a sudden they want to give themselves RACF special or RACF operations, that kind of thing. And I'm using RACF, but same kind of facility I think exists in Top Secret and ACF2. We'll detect that. We'll give you the capability to take some immediate actions. We'll notify you about it and all that kind of stuff. Same thing with, if somebody, there's different kinds of attacks that can take place. And the one that's on the screen there is rogue encryption. If somebody, obviously Al talked about this too, if somebody starts encrypting your stuff on your ZOS system, that's not a good thing. But the same thing is if somebody starts writing binary zeros over a whole bunch of data sets and that kind of thing. So there's different vectors in that whole area, but we detect them. You can detect if somebody's doing a binary zero write over a bunch of data. You can detect rogue encryption if somebody's starting to encrypt a bunch of files. You can detect that early on in the process. And how we do that is we set a threshold. And if we have a job or a user that goes over the threshold of instructions for encryption and that kind of thing, that's when we'll kind of take action and say, oh, We don't know anything about this batch job. It's encrypting a bunch of data. It's over what our tolerance level is for encryption. We're going to stop it. And what we do is we suspend it, we quiesce it. You can then take time. It's kind of the gift of time. Because you stopped it from doing any additional damage, if in fact it's malicious, you can go and investigate this job or user and see what they're doing and make a determination. And if it is malicious, you can cancel it, and then we'll give you the capability to restore any of the damaged files. And if it's benign, if it's not malicious, you can just resume the job from the place where it was suspended, and the job will continue as normal. So there's a lot of capability there, and there's a lot of protection, and that's detecting an outright attack. Like, well, that's when you get to some of those things, somebody is attacking you. That's what we're detecting, and that's what we're giving you the capability to come back from really, really quickly. If you happen to be in Europe and you're worried about complying with the DORA regulations, some of the things that they put in DORA are quite difficult to respond to. And one of the things is the whole notion of being able to recover from any kind of attack in 2 hours or less. Difficult to do. Some of the stuff that we're doing, hopefully, will give you the capability to get close to doing that, if not meeting it anyway. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point, Gar. I mean, realistically, there's just no way to make a 2-hour recovery window if you're using manual processes. So the ability to run through what would otherwise be an outage or to recover quickly is what CSF is built to provide for you.
Anyway, the other thing that we can do in the whole early warning stuff is we do watch what people are doing. We kind of give you a big brother is watching. And if all of a sudden you detect that somebody who normally doesn't do it is starting to look into places that they shouldn't, like sys1 data sets, parm lives, proc lives, that kind of thing. And they're you get kind of a feeling that they're kind of snooping around in places where they shouldn't. Well, we can detect that. And again, it works in a similar fashion. We set thresholds for that kind of behavior. And if somebody exceeds the threshold, we'll let you know about it. And in those cases, it's still benign, and they're really just footprinting you. They're not attacking you, so we don't give you any of the suspend or any of those kinds of things. But we will let you know about it, and you can investigate and see what they're doing, and see if they're doing it as a result of something they have to do, as a project they're doing as part of their normal work, or if it's something that they truly shouldn't be snooping around, and they are. Same thing with dangerous operator commands. I mean, you can, we do detect things like if somebody does a set prog and they're trying to add an APF library during the day, we'll detect that. In that case, we give you the capability to stop it. So we do a lot of stuff where we're watching for operator commands and that kind of thing. And the 24/7 vigilance, if your ZOS system is up, this is up, it's watching. You don't have to run a scan. It just happens. So it's quite powerful from that point of view. So I do think that the early warning component has taken a significant stride in starting to really, really put up some really powerful defenses in a ZOS system.
Gary, there's 2 more questions came in, and one is EW a separate product from FIM? The overall structure is a framework of foundational elements that make all of the capabilities of CSF available. That's the framework part. On top of that, there are 4 different what we would call applications or products, and they can be bought one at a time. So FIM is one, early warning is another, and we'll talk about data exfiltration a little bit later, but there's also a supply chain component. So I think that rounds out that question. And somebody asked about whitelist processes. Yes, we're probably the world's leader in whitelisting. And one of the things that we do, and this comes right from FIM, is the ability to reduce false positives. We like to say 0 false positives with this tool. If you get an alert, you better pay attention. And that's because there are certain things that will be suspicious, but not, but common activities in your environment. So one of the things that the product does is it learns about your environment. It learns what normal is. It automatically builds whitelists, and if things are on those whitelists, it allows them to continue. So it logs the fact that things that this has transpired, but it doesn't raise an alert, and it doesn't say there's something bad going on, because we know that that's a normal process, and you've had the opportunity to review it and say, yep, that's a normal process. We want that to continue. But if you see something that looks like that, but it isn't on our whitelist, then you better take action. So that's kind of how whitelisting works. Okay, Gar.
Alrighty. This is just a pictorial overview of how the early warning feature works. So if you have somebody doing it active, I think we've talked about all the stuff that's going to come up here. So it's continuous monitoring. If somebody attacks you, we suspend them. We gather forensics. We present the forensics in ISPF or in our browser. And again, most people use the browser. And then that gives you the capability to go and do an investigation and determine if what was being done is benign or if it's malicious, and then you can take action based on that. Now, for some reason, I couldn't go ahead. I don't know what was going on there. Where are we here? Okay, just a couple words about our recovery assistant. So for both any changes that we detect to your system through file integrity monitoring or through the early warning facility feature, we can restore those files to their original state. And how that works is we have a JCL template, and the JCL templates that we provide with the product include the usual DF HSM, DF SMS. Some people want to restore from a gold copy, and a gold copy is just simply a copy of a file sitting around that matches the one that they're running in production. And FDR for people who are using that. We do also support, and this is, everything's getting a little older now. It used to be new, but we also support the tool from Rocket. Rocket has a tool, I think they call it data recovery. And what data recovery does is it lets you restore individual files from an immutable backup. And that's quite a bit different than doing a whole volume restore. And we have the capability to use that product and restore individual files from an immutable if you do have the Rocket DR product installed. And so what we do is we take those templates, we apply the knowledge of what's been changed on your system to those templates, we run them, restore the files, and because we're a file integrity monitoring product, we can take the files that we've just restored, run a scan on them, and give you 100% certainty that the files that we restored exactly match the ones that were in production prior to the changes taking place. So we give you complete confidence that what you've restored is the correct stuff. And if you've ever been in any one of these situations where you're trying to figure out what went wrong, that can be a real benefit. Trust me. If you're going through trying to restore after an attack, it's really useful to be able to do that. So that's kind of
one more question, Gary. Somebody was asking specifically about mutable backups, CyberVault, safeguarded copies. We support IBM safeguarded copies, Dell snapsets, Hitachi snapshots, in substantially the same order. But yes, we're able to look inside what's available in those immutables and actually provide knowledge and direction for the recovery as to which one would be the right safeguarded copy to go to that preceded the attack. So you can be sure that the data is secure at that level. That then allows you to go and recover them exactly like Gary said, at the data set level if required, or at a broader level. So yes, you could do a full recovery and do an IPL as is the standard practice in the IBM world, but we provide an awful lot more information and granularity on how that can happen quickly. So be happy to take a more detailed question or answer offline on that, but it does require a little configuration because it matters how you want it to come back and how you want the process to work. But as Gary says, it's highly automated and integrated with the recovery of the system components, which are absolutely as critical as the data components. So back to you, Gary.
Okay, while I was talking to you, I realized there's something on the screen here that we haven't talked about at all, and that's client response protocols. And so, in all of the but whenever we detect an event and you pop into the browser, there is user defined, so defined by people who buy the product, response protocol for that event. You don't have to use them, but it is kind of a useful thing, particularly if you think about these things should not happen very often. And so when somebody gets an event and they go, "Oh, geez, I haven't seen one of these for a long time. What am I supposed to do with it?" Well, you can pop open right on the screen a set of instructions that tell you exactly what to do with the event, who to call, what you should do, what the organization wants you to do when you get one of these events and that kind of thing. So it's quite a useful thing to be able to help you manage when you do get an incident like this. And I'll show you what that looks like if we get time to do a demo. I think we will, but anyway, just so you know. So exfiltration is not available today. It's coming. People are developing it. Some of the feature set, just so you know, they're still rounding out what's going to be in the first release. But I'm really excited about this. This is kind of going right after one of the great big fears. And it should be a great big fear for people who are running any system in modern times. If people steal your data, it's gone, and you don't, and you can't get it back. And even if somebody steals your data and says, give me $1 million and I won't give it to anybody else," well, these are people who broke in and stole the data. I don't know how much you can trust them. I just don't know. Anyway, so we're going to put into the product another feature set. It's going the first three or so. What the feature set is going to be, for sure, the first two are going to be in the feature that we're working on. Those they'll be there in September. I'm not sure about all of them. There's some stuff that we still aren't sure if we're going to be able to get it done in time, but we will put some. They will be delivered over time, but I'm just not sure yet how big the feature set's going to be. But there will be some definite protection for people exfiltrating data. If somebody's doing transferring large amounts of data to an IP address, we'll be able to detect that data being transferred and stop that process from going, that kind of thing. So anyway, there's a lot of function there. Same thing with TSO. It could be bash out, it could be TSO. The one about specific data sets, there's still some, that's one of the things I'm not sure is going to make it. We're going to try to get it in there, but with everything, we're trying to get stuff out to the market. And so we might have to make a decision to leave that till a later date. But we're going to be able to give you some really, really serious protection on people stealing data from your site and being able to stop it while it's happening before you lose all the data. To me, this is a really, really big thing. So anyway, I don't know if there's much more we want to talk about that. Again, we will be doing whitelisting. There will be notifications when it occurs. All of the stuff that you get with the other components of the product, you'll be able to get with this because it's part of the framework. So anyway, I can't demonstrate this today though. Any questions there?
I think we can't over stress the fact that the really big cyber the very, very expensive cyber attacks that have taken place in the mainframe arena basically are all numbered on the number of user IDs revealed, the number of credit cards revealed, the amount of damage done by these data exfiltrations. If you think about it and you intercept one of these things, and it goes for all of the interceptions we talked about, we're intercepting the bad guys. The rest of the system continues to process. So in fact, there's no real outage. We're just stopping the bad guys. Now, you may have to do data recovery, and you may have to do other forms of recovery to get back as much as you can. But it is absolutely critical that in the case of an encryption or in the case of data flowing out of your system, that you stop the damage as soon as you can. Instant detection is not enough. It is merely the start of a process that needs the entire process to complete instantly. And that's where we bring the people into the equation, because by stopping the damage, we give the skilled people that have to react the time to make the right decisions and the time to react. So is it back to you, Gary, or am I up next?
I don't know. Do you want to keep going or do you want to do okay?
I think we can just finish this up in about
Okay.
one or 2 minutes.
Okay.
So why don't you do 3 clicks for me?
3 clicks.
Well, 2 more.
2 more?
There you go. There we go. Okay, so we talked about the fact that CSF implements the NIST detailed structure, and that all revolves around identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. That's the process layer. What we bring is the blue boxes at the bottom. They're the technology layer. They're all about how to make this instant and provide the world's best detection capabilities that protect you in real time, that can take the process from a one-off with a bunch of manual processes into a manual recovery in some manner. And in some of these big outages, like these companies were off the air for days. In fact, one of them was 9 days. And in many cases, the attacks really were set up weeks in advance. You got to be able to identify those and resolve them before the attack takes place. But if you get into a system, a 0-day event where it's never happened before, and one of those very resourceful ransomware companies does something really bad to you, you have to have an end-to-end, and it has to be multi-vendor. You probably need more tools to be integrated than even us. So we provide the framework and the structure for our own tool set, but also to integrate with tools from other vendors. It's all GUI based. It's very quick to implement. It's very automated. So in most cases, there's nothing to do, and that's what we want. Okay, Garrett. And I think maybe I've covered these points. So, perhaps we can just see if people are interested in demos or not.
Okay.
I didn't see any new questions come in.
Okay, where am I here?
No new questions.
Well, conveniently, I'm right in a job here that's going to encrypt a bunch of data sets. So,
oh, you are a bad guy, Gary.
Yeah, there you go. Conveniently, here it is. So what does this job do? So this is the job that I have allocated a bunch of data sets that start out with mtgy.qa.fimew, and I think there's 20 of them. And so what this job will do, it's going to update some of these number of 20 of them, and it's going to use this instruction, which is an encrypt instruction, the actual hardware encrypt instruction on a ZOS processor. on a Z processor, and it's going to do 3,000 of these instructions on every file. And I've got a threshold set. I think it's set at 5. And so what should happen if everything goes according to Hoyle, I should detect this after 5 data sets get updated. It could be 6. It's not instantaneous. There is sometimes a lag, but it should be close to 5. It might be 6. But anyway, if I go and I submit
But it
that,
is second. It is a second or so.
oh
So
yeah.
I mean, compare that with manual processes. You're talking about, boy, I can't see this in the first place as an operator or anybody else. Well, going to take me a little while to react to that. Whereas we're going to do it in a second or so.
This is our browser GUI interface that we've talked about. I'm just going into the early warning pre, and there's the job I just submitted, and as you can see, it's suspended, and so it's already in a suspended state. And if just to show you what that looks like, maybe I'll whip into. Oh, I've already pre'd on that. So there's the job that I just submitted. And if I PF11 here a couple of times, I'll get over there. You can see it's in a quiet state. So I've detected that this job was doing some encryption. I've stopped it. So now what you've got is, if you've got time to go and investigate what's going on here and see what's happened with this job. So if I go and I click this little eyeball icon on the right-hand side of the screen, okay, so here's the count of what I had. So I told you the threshold was set at 5. That's what that is. Let's just go ahead and see how many files. Oh, and it did stop after 5, so that's good. It caught it we're right at the threshold level. We talked a little bit. I talked a little bit about recently on the recovery screen about response protocol. So if you get one of these and you're a first responder to this kind of an incident, we can have a whole bunch of instructions here that this person could follow to go and resolve this problem. When you get this, so after you've gone through your kind of investigation phase and you want to do something with this job, from this screen you can either resume it. If your investigation determines that it's benign, you can resume the job, or you can cancel it. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel it just because.
Because we knew it was a bad guy.
Right. Okay, so from here now, I've canceled the job, and it did change those 5 files. If I click the recovery assist button, it's taken some JCL, it's tailored it with the names of those 5 files, and it'll let me restore them. I can't do that. This is actually, I talked about Rocket a little bit. This is actually this JCL. If I did have a Rocket facility on my IBM system, which I do not, I could submit this and it would restore those files. You have to take my word for it. It'll work. We have tested this with Rocket software, but we do buy an LPAR from IBM, and for some reason they won't buy this from Rocket to put it on our system. Anyway, just so you know. So anyway, so we can't do that, but it would work if we did have it. So that's kind of how the recovery assistant works. So we're kind of there. Like, we've detected it, we stopped it, we've given you the time to go and investigate this job and determine whether it's malicious or benign, and then take some action, restore it, or resume it, or cancel it if it's malicious. That's what we did. Al did talk a little bit about whitelisting. So for all of these things, and this includes mass deletes, mass overwrites, that kind of thing, we have the capability to build a whitelist, and Al talked about it being a learning system. What we do is, for a period of time, we can run in what we call collect mode. And collect mode runs, you just run your normal batch job stream as normal. We'll collect information about all of those jobs, about what they're going to do from a CPU time point of view, the IOs, how many files they write, how many files they delete, that kind of thing. And we'll give you the capability to, if you just click on this, it'll add it to a whitelist. And then that job will be able to run, and actually we give you a little bit of leeway. I think it's up to 15% more than what the parameters are that you normally run in, so that we won't detect an alert on it. We'll let them go over what your thresholds are and that kind of thing. So that's how the whitelisting works. If you wanted to see file integrity monitoring work, I can certainly show you that. This is what we operate on, is a collection of files. I happen to have a collection of files here. It's my own stuff. If you want to see what's in it, you can just click a button here, and I've got, these are some files I have on the ZOS system. So if I want to go and change one of those files, pick any old member here, run rep2, and I'll just add some comments, save that, and I'll go back to my browser. If I want to run a scan from my browser, this little icon says run scan, and it's a little magnifying glass on a disk drive is what it's supposed to look like. So if I just go ahead and I click that, I'll run a quick scan. It'll catch that for sure. And I'll just refresh my screen, and it's gone out, it's run a scan, it's detected that that file's changed, and it's given me a status that I've had a mismatch on my keys. If I click on this, I get all of the forensic information I told you about. So if I look here, remember I told you that you could compare them. It's showing you that there were 5 comments added. This is the base, this is the change file. So it's showing you what was done there. We talked a little bit about immutable backups. This system actually has some Hitachi snapshots on it. That's what they look like. And all of these have green tick mark. What does the green tick mark signify? So and these are all data that we were using last summer, but all of these immutables were created prior to when this change was detected. So therefore, they are useful candidates to restore from, and that's why they have this. If they had been created after we detected the change, there wouldn't be a green tick mark, there'd be a red X, just so you know. Again, we have a response protocol on how you want your people to respond to these kinds of changes. In the access list, we'll pull the data from SMF that pertains to this change. So from SMF, we get the exact time that the file was changed. We know what agent, and typically people run 1 agent per LPAR. So that's what that is. That's the LPAR this change was made on. That's my user ID. It's showing you the user ID is Gary, and my job name, because it's the user ID that made the change, it's the same as the user ID. And there's the file that I changed, and that happens to be the volume serial it's running on. So there's some good forensic information there. We're going to look at the scan history again in a second, but this just tells you what's been going on with this file. We ran a scan, and we got a mismatch, and this is back to where we were in the beginning. Whenever a file integrity monitoring system detects a change, you have to do one of 2 things. You either have to decide that the changed file is the new normal and accept the change, or you have to restore the file to its previous state so that you're back to where you want to be in production. I'm going to go ahead and hit the recovery assist on this. And again, we've tailored some JCL. This one I can submit. It's going to copy the file from a gold copy that we have here somewhere. Where is it? Right there. So it's going to actually copy that individual member and do a surgical restore for you. So if I click on this, and then I go into my scan history, if I refresh my screen a few times, come on. What it's doing is running a batch job to do the restore. There, it's run. So now what's happened is it's put a little tick mark here beside this mismatch and said, okay, this is resolved. And the last step in that job I submitted was a scan. Remember I told you, because we're file integrity monitoring product, you can run a scan and make sure that what you have just restored is what we want to have in production. And that's what that's telling you, is that that correct says, okay, now we know the thing is correct and everything is good. So there you go.
So, Gary, I think on that note, we'll probably wrap up this session, get everybody back to their day a few minutes early. But I think it's safe to say there's nobody else that can bring a tool that gives you so much breadth and so much capability and so much instant reaction. It finally gives folks in the support center a way to stay ahead of the thousands of people that are trying to break in and extort money. So I want to really say things have changed. AI helps attackers. AI helps us build better products. We use AI more to do research and understand what the kind of problems that we should be fixing are, and then we fix them in an automated manner. But it's a changing world. What worked 5 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, certainly doesn't work today. So again, the key points here for us: help people stay out of trouble in the first place. However, if through no fault of their own they get into a problem, we can ensure that they can keep the system running throughout most of the foreseeable events. But if something really obscure or really serious, really critical comes up, we'll help you do the world's fastest recovery. So that's the real reason for MainTegrity CSF to exist, is a full way of dealing with the kinds of cyber problems that are occurring today. So with that, I'll just sign off on behalf of MainTegrity and say thank you very much for joining us. I hope it was useful. I hope it makes you think about how we are going to have to stay ahead of well-funded criminal and external agents that might want to break in. Thanks again for your time.